The glider pilots of the 4 German assault groups flew along a path illuminated by a line of blue searchlight beams 20 kilometers apart, directing them to the Dutch border. But problems soon arose. The glider carrying the commander, Lieutenant Witzig, was cast loose early, and another glider was freed by a near collision, depriving the Sturmgruppe Granit of 2 gliders before they had even reached the fort. This was 20% of their strength and included their commanding officer. Nevertheless, once the plan had been activated, it could not be recalled, so the remaining planes continued. The gliders were finally released at 5:10 and after 15 minutes of gliding approached Fort Eben Emael. Much earlier, the Dutch and Belgian armies had detected the sound of German armor moving along the border, and Eben Emael's commander received an alert. The fort's internal siren rang, and the process of calling in key personnel by telephone began. Confirmation of the alert came at 4 a.m. when the Junkers were heard flying over the Dutch airspace. At 5:15 a.m., the commander of the fortress was informed of unidentified aircraft over Maastricht, so he put the 4 machine gun and anti-aircraft crews on high alert. 10 minutes later, the gliders were already skidding to the top of the fort, and the machine gun crews had opened fire at close range, could not zero in on the fast-moving gliders. The gliders were landing simultaneously by the 3 bridges of the Albert Canal. 10 minutes later, the German ground offensive began. The 71 German paratroopers fanned out as they landed and rapidly went about their business. They did not realize that the commanding officer, Lieutenant Rudolf Witzig, was missing. The machine gun positions at the south end of the fort were captured immediately by the first glider team to land. The glider landed so close to one position that it tore a machine gun right out of the pit and stopped beside another pit. Within 20 minutes, the glidermen had successfully attacked 9 of the Belgian positions. Charges were placed on 7 armored observation domes, with 5 domes rendered inoperable. 9 of the 75mm guns in 3 of the casemates were destroyed. Most of the other casemates and emplacements fell like dominoes. Thus, the main gun emplacements that could have seriously hindered the Albert Canal attacks, with one exception, had been cleared by only 71 German paratroopers. Cupola Süd or South was the only gun top the fort that remained operational. All German attempts to destroy this position failed, including attacks by Stuka dive bombers. As the day wore on, things got hot for the Germans as the Belgian army recovered from the initial shock of the attacks. There were 2 half-hearted counterattacks by the Belgians within the fort, but these attacks and the soldiers who were artillery trained and did not know how to prosecute a ground attack was not successful. The exhausted and thirsty Germans had not been relieved according to the timetable. An effort to cross the Albert Canal on the evening of 10th of May to relieve Sturmgruppe Granit was stopped. At the fort, Witzig assault group was running low on ammunition and water. To make matters worse, the other Belgian fortresses within the range of Eben Emael began directing their fire onto its upper surface to dislodge the Germans, lobbing 1,200 shells onto the position. Several German soldiers were wounded, but most of them safely sheltered in the gun emplacements they had previously captured. After dark, the Germans renewed their attacks on the several operational gun emplacements. Meanwhile, 2 bridges over the Albert Canal had been taken intact, with the third, the Canne Bridge, destroyed by the Belgians. At 4 a.m. the next morning, German Pioneer Battalion 51 finally managed to cross the Albert Canal. By 7 a.m., the Germans were climbing the slope of the fort and linking up with Witzig's group, and at 8:30, Witzig turned the captured installation over to them. Still, some defenders were holding out. By mid-morning, the air inside the fort was deteriorating as poisonous fumes from the explosions spread through the ventilation system, and Belgian morale was falling. The commander of the fort planned the surrender, and at 11:45 a Belgian officer stepped outside, walking across the retractable bridge across the moat, and with a white sheet flying on a broom handle, negotiated the surrender of the fort. The firing ceased, but no one had pulled the bridge back, and suddenly the entire Belgian garrison of 780 men came out with their hands in the air. The line of Belgian prisoners was 1 mile long. The garrison had suffered 21 killed and 145 wounded. The survivors were transported to Dortmund and kept in strict isolation until July of 1940, because the German High Command did not want knowledge of their glider attack or their secret hollow-charge weapons to reach the Allies. Finally, they were imprisoned in a POW camp near Hanover, Germany. The fall of Eben ML demonstrated how a fast, hard-hitting surprise attack could shock defenders, causing morale to plummet rapidly, leading to their surrender. Through excellent planning, innovative use of gliders and hollow-charge technology, the super fortress fell in just over 31 hours. Sturmgruppe Granit suffered 6 killed and 15 wounded. All officers of the glider assault received the Knight's Cross, and the NCOs and men of Sturmabteilung Koch, the parent regiment, received a generous allowance of Iron Crosses, personally presented by the German dictator in a special ceremony on the 15th of May 1940. The daring assault on Fort Eben ML paved the way for the rapid German victory in the West.